just like we want the quality of our work to grow, we want our income to grow. We want to grow into new levels of business and entrepreneurship going into 2025. What stands out to you as the greatest opportunity as far as scaling your efforts?
Before, when I was doing strategy sessions, it would be a lot of like Q&As. 2 or 3 clients this year that were like, so what is this? What is this for? What are we doing here? And that's when I was like, okay, I got to rethink this. Something's not working well.
Dude, yeah, thanks for hanging today, man. Let's jump in. Let's do this. So Andrew Lovell, dude. College, we did the college thing together for a bit. We did some student films, we had some adventures. But tell me, just give me the brief for anybody who's watching and or listening. Just what are you doing? Tell us about your agency, your freelance company. Tell us what you're doing right now. What is Andrew all about?
Yeah. So, obviously, you and I know each other from way back then. Feels like forever, honestly. But so I own Camp Ape. It's a graphic design, branding, motion studio here in Springfield, Missouri. I've been doing it for I'm entering my 5th year doing Camp Ape. Went through a little bit of a rebrand with names. When I started, it was Lovell Design Co., which is my last name, and then kind of took a little bit of a rebrand myself, and kind of went through a strategy process for myself of trying to really outthink the box and try to figure out what really is my business. And it really came down to 3 ingredients, which is why do we go camping? What is it the purpose of like having a campfire? And then, what's kind of the outcome from camping, hiking, adventuring out in the woods is kind of the main thesis of all that. So with the 3, it kind of relates to the business side of things. So, most of the time you have a client that comes in and they just don't know what they want. And that's kind of what you do but they know that they want something. And so that's kind of what has to do with when you decide to go on a hike or whatever, that there's going to be things that are unexpected, poison ivy, run into some type of critter or whatever. That's just kind of the usual. But when I was kind of thinking of it, that was kind of the pairing of the 2. And then like gathering around campfire, usually tell ghost stories about your life, or you talk about random things that pertain to life itself. And so that was kind of the idea of like, well, you compare campfires and also just like the relationship with clients when you're kind of trying to get a background of their industry, their story, all those things. So meshing that together. And then also at the end, when you get done with the, an hour hike, or maybe it's a overnight thing with camping, usually the outcome is, man, you feel rejuvenated, you feel energized, you're ready to go for the next day. And so even with most of my clients that I've dealt with, most of the time they go in with like, okay, I trust you. I hope, it turns out well. And then by the end, it's like, oh, wow, this actually was amazing. This experience is great. I can now think of like everything that I can do with my product photography, logos, all those things. I can figure out what I need to do now. And you've set me up for success. So it's almost like I am their guide through this hike, where I know the territory, I understand the lay of the land, layout of the land. And so for me, it's very much important for me to put that all into consideration. So that's where Camp Ape came from and kind of blossomed from. And then the ape part was always kind of a part of my original stuff. But then kind of in just brought it over to Camp Ape. And I like the quirkiness of the name. And so, but yeah, my business, it's been around for 5 years. That's kind of a little bit about my business. Again, like I do branding, graphic design, photography, videography, animation. That's kind of my wheelhouse is all those things, and just trying to serve clients in the best way possible.
I love that you like stuck with this, because I know like in your work, 5 years ago, I noticed that you kind of had this theme of, this outdoor theme, and kind of you had a lot of nature themes and motifs and branding work, which I think is in and of itself is kind of a challenge, I think, because not all brands want to have a certain that kind of aesthetic. And it's funny because I'm up here in Washington right now, and I was like hanging out with my parents at their house, and they're making coffee and all this stuff, and I saw something that I recognize, and I was like, this is interesting because the timing of this is uncanny. This is 2 days ago. So I go into their coffee cabinet, and they just got back from Springfield, Missouri, and they had this.
Oh my
And I was like,
gosh.
this looks so familiar. And no,
That's
and
crazy.
literally, dude, I remembered seeing your spec work that you're putting out. And
Yeah.
tell me if this was a spec work thing, because I was like, I felt like I remembered you posting this stuff, and I was like, this is Andrew's work. And like literally I've been talking to him in 2 days. So I was cracking up. I was like, I had to be like, bro, my parents got Ozark Mountain Coffee. This is, you designed this package. And my parents were like, oh, that's amazing. But I thought you'd get a kick out of that. Because I'm like, I'm up here. What are the chances that anybody would have this up here or whatever? But
Right.
tell me the story about that. Was this a spec job that you gave them, or did you start a client relationship? Like, how did that come about? And maybe tell me through that a little bit of like, maybe a little bit of your process as far as, because you're talking about with the campfire. I like the idea of you're kind of owning the process with clients. So for you, how to maybe walk me through maybe you wooing the client in your journey with this, or how did that come about?
Yeah.
And maybe is there a tie-in with that at all for you, or?
There was no tie, like, with my brand being very outdoorsy. So just to kind of like give you a background of why I kind of, obviously there's ingredients to the mixing pot, but it was also the fact that like, I grew up a farm boy. So I I was always in nature. I don't necessarily I've never hunted. I've never fished. Obviously being in Springfield, like you are surrounded by everything that is fishing and hunters and all those things, especially Johnny Morse himself, who, owns Bass Pro Shop. So it's like, you're just surrounded by the outdoors. And so like, for me, it was very much of like taking on that persona and like understanding the strategy. Cause like you said, like I think you talked about it briefly there, but like I went through so many different phases. Like when I was doing Lovell Design Co., it was like when I started, it was like, well, let me take on the like persona of Jim Lovell, the astronaut, and let me like explore the idea of space and things like that with my brand. And then it was like, I'm just not feeling that. And then it got to like different color schemes that just didn't seem right. And it was like, wow, this just doesn't seem like me at all. And it didn't really feel like a business in my sense. Like it felt like I was really a freelancer. Like, I mean, most freelancers, when they start, they go in with their name and that's what they are. And so for me, it's like, I looked at it also in the fact of like looking ahead 10, 15 years. If I have other people that are working with me, I don't want them to be associated with the last name Lovell. I want them to own the fact of like, no, we are collectively Camp Abe. And so like, that was a huge thing for me. But then also now kind of getting into like Ozark Mountain Coffee Company. So I had someone that, so Maddie and Preston, fantastic people, love them to death, would do anything for them and their family. They're the ones that own Ozark Mountain Coffee Company. They're around our age, but great, humble people. And they had posted something on Facebook of like needing something in like a community group chat or whatever. And my wife's connection knew that I did this stuff. She's seen my work. She was pretty fond of it. And so she's like, hey, look, we worked with this guy. And at the time I was Lovell Design Co. So there's no correlations with outdoorness with them and me. But
You're new. Yeah, sure. Yeah.
So I got together with them, got in touch, and they were like, well, we want to work on this coffee bag. We want to like revamp these. And what they had was just a logo. When I came in, they had another artist create the logo. And so it was kind of implementing how do we work on this process? How do we try to work on a client relationship? And there was like, obviously like every client, when you get into that relationship, there's a lot of the like you go a few rounds, but it's just trying to understand each other. It's just trying to like understand the project, what they're thinking, what you're thinking, and trying to align those things. And so, I think we went like through 3 rounds, and then it got to the point where we both were like, we got to sit down again. We got to figure this out. But what the first project was, not to kind of keep skipping ahead without context. So I was assigned to do their coffee bags. And with the coffee bags, it was that they wanted something modern and something that would be taken off the shelves immediately by their customers and things like that. And so I stepped in and basically gave them a few iterations, few rounds of this project. And then we landed on what you have in physicality, the bags themselves. And so there's a lot of things that went into it. So like the sides, you can kind of see with the sides, there's wind. It's a brand pattern that represents wind, but it's also supposed to represent like the steam off of coffee. So it's like kind of combining those 2 elements as like a brand pattern. And then obviously like giving them a little badge that would be the Missouri border, things like that. And then obviously get the clock out of there. There you go.
Oh, dude, there we go.
There you go.
Now we're cooking.
But they had like, they like on the front of the bag, they had their font, they had their like one of their illustrations. They supplied me with like, they had an illustration, they had a logo, which is like their circle badge logo that is pretty popular. And so those were the only things that they had. Well, when I got done with that project, they were like, okay, well, we liked working with you. Do you like working with us? I was like, yeah, of course. And they're like, well, what else can we do? And I said, well, I do websites, I do branding work. They're like, well, do you think you would want to help us with something like that? They're like, website sounds good because the website currently is it's too simplified. We need something that like feels like us and feels outdoorsy. And so I was like, yeah, of course. And so they signed on to do kind of branding work and a website. So I kind of delivered them this whole package that includes kind of, a lot of people think when you rebrand that it has to be this whole start from scratch situation, and it's not. It can easily be something where if you have something that you love and it's already in place, but you just need it to be like developed more, you need a story there. That's where I can kind of step in and kind of help you along the way. Because I think sometimes, if you have a logo for so long, you miss the mission statement. When ownership changes or there's new situations that occur, I think that there's always an opportunity to reconfigure what you're doing within your business. And so this was an opportunity where I took what they already had, took their colors, and then basically just expanded on all of it. So giving them like a retro throwback logo to what they had in the 90s from 94 to 2000 something. And they have it, they showed me everything that it was on. It was like on menus, it was on banners, all this stuff. And it was really cool. So I wanted to kind of play homage to that stuff, but then also like creating them like secondary logos and submarks and things like that they can really go wild with. And then other things like illustration pieces, like icons and that can live on the website, or taglines or things like that. So most of the things that you see on the website are all those things, illustrations, icons, and taglines. And so that's kind of what was delivered then. And then this year I got to work on a few pieces with them as well. Like they're celebrating 30 years. And so I got to do like an anniversary logo, and I did a promo product video for them for their bags. Cause I had done one for them when we first started, and it just like, it didn't work. I had it all envisioned in my head, but at the time, like I couldn't get it expressed in the way I wanted to, which sometimes happens. I feel like as creatives, we just get kind of these brain farts where like, okay, this looks great on paper, but then when you actually do it in the real world, it's like, oh, well, that didn't really work the way I thought it was going to, but you had promised all these things to the client. So we revisited that, and the video is great. I actually just submitted it for our Addy Awards here in Missouri, so that was kind of fun. And then, yeah, and then like even their website did like product photography, so all their products that you see on their website, I've done all the product photography. It's been fun. They're one of those clients that I blast all the time when I have the opportunity, because they're just one of those clients that like I've done a lot for, and I love doing work for them. And I keep egging them on right now about doing some more work for 2025. And they're like, hold still. We're going to sit down. We're going to sit down and we're going to discuss it for next year. So I'm hoping that they come back and we can get some more work for 2025. But yeah, I couldn't say enough about them. And honestly, it's so odd to me how creativity has an effect in like when it's out there, because those bags have sold like crazy. This has been one of their most, like, since rebranding those bags, they have not had a downtime. They have just completely just projectiled, and it's just like they keep going up higher and higher. So it's like, it's so cool. And their website is real well received. They've told me a few times the little pop-up events that they've done, like, yeah, everybody's comes to their booth like, oh my gosh, this is such good work, like who did this, all this stuff. So it's really cool. It's fun for me to hear that too. So
yeah, that's exciting, man. I mean, I'm sure, when you look back on your portfolio, and I mean, we can get into the nitty gritty too of how that really looks for you. But, I know for me, for one reason or another, like you'll have those projects that just, it synchronizes just the right way. You have just the right amount of creative influence and input. And the strength of the idea is there. And then when you get to that final result, you look at it and go like, oh yeah, super proud of that. Like, featured on my website, like as a creative, running a business, I can feel 100% proud about sharing this thing or whatever. And then you have, some of those other jobs or some of that work where, maybe you feel like more of a workhorse where, you're just trying to, maybe a company just wants you to kind of check a box. Maybe there's not a whole lot of creativity involved, and you're not going to necessarily get the accolade or you're not going to feel like that's the the work you'll be most proud of and all that stuff, but it'll put food on the table and clients happy. And it's like still a win, but not like how some other projects might feel like the win,
But, for sure.
Yeah. I mean, how have you, because you've rebranded, I mean, going from, and I've gone through a very similar transition. I mean, I've had Read Visual Co. I've had, before that, I was like rocking this name Blueprint for a while, and I've been kind of like switching up names, switching up like, like business approaches and stuff, and like trying to find my bullseye. But I mean, how much of that change for you was, because I think before you were just kind of focused on branding and design and stuff, right? You weren't necessarily doing a lot of photo. So maybe what was your, because I know obviously you've done photo video, but then maybe if that wasn't your what you wanted to focus your business around, what made you want to make that change? And I guess the reason I ask is, like, me personally, like I've struggled to kind of figure that out for myself too, where like I'm sort of also the type where I'm not like, I don't want to just necessarily I don't want to be just a DP, just a web developer or just this or that. But then I'm also feeling like I've made too general of a play at times, where I try to be too much of the all-in-one solution, and then I start to feel like I don't really have my my marketing kind of trying to really be clear about what is it I offer, and what is my bread and butter. Like when it comes to me providing a solution for a client, this is where the ball hits, it's a home run every time or whatever. So I don't know,
Yeah.
like what was kind of your, I mean, inspiration around, changing it from, I mean, you kind of alluded to it, I guess, having kind of more of an agency feel, maybe more of
Yeah.
like a
Mhm.
bigger, like, you can scale it, you can
Yeah.
approach it with a dreaming a little bigger or whatever. So I don't know, maybe fill me in on a little bit of like what inspired you to kind of go that direction.
Yeah, I think for me when I started, it was like branding and design, and like I for me, like I think also like with our time at Evangel, like we took so many classes in the communication department that it kind of made me feel like, and even when I had my time at like Big Pixel, which is an agency here in town, but like when I was working there, it was like a lot of diverse projects. It wasn't just doing collateral work with design, or it wasn't just
Mhm.
like creating logos and some color schemes and things like that. It was like some other stuff, like you were doing digital ads that had like motion to them, and you had some photography that maybe you had to touch up, or whatever. And so with that, and then also like again, like I said, like Evangel's time when I was there, it just felt like and when I was growing up, I mean, I was always creating videos. I mean, there's a YouTube channel out there that I will never say the name to, because I obviously don't want uh I don't want to be totally embarrassed there, but it still exists just for nostalgia purposes. But yeah, it's like, and so for me, like it's very much of like trying to figure out things that I like and I enjoy doing. I don't want to like hone into one thing in particular. And I think like after the first 2 years, it was like, man, what else could I do? And I knew like my knowledge, like when I was working at Big Pixel, I was doing websites. I was doing a lot of big websites, anything from a landing page to like 20-page websites. And so for me, it was like bringing that on. And then like recently this year, I've really had a shift of mindset where I don't do websites at all. I try to outsource that, because I've had problems in the past where a lot of times where you outsource or you do a website for a client, and it's not, the turnout's not great. And so
Mhm.
not saying like the client relationship's not good, but the website itself just doesn't, it just looks like poop afterwards. So it's just not fun for me. And so for me,
Mhm.
like I wanted to really pride myself on of like, what are the things that I really enjoy doing? And so I really love
Mhm.
branding. I love design. That will be my bread and butter for the rest of my life. Like I love it. It's one of the funnest things that I've ever been able to learn and adapt to my skill sets. But then video and photography is one of those things that I'm just getting so into it. It's just so enjoyable. I love the technicality to it, and especially like video. It's like what can I do? And especially like you see a lot of these, like there's a team out here, a video production team that like, I mean, they're using rigs and they're using cranes and all these things. And it's like, I'm just a one person band. So like, what can I do that's going to like give that effect of like, a zoom in, or, that I'm, not taking the little lens and trying to zoom it in, I'm trying to like actually give motion to it. Or
Mhm.
different things like that. What can I do on a good budget, but then also make it worthwhile for a client? And so like doing things like Ozark Mountain Coffee Company this year, and doing a video for them, or I worked for a church earlier this spring that I did a whole bunch of, from testimonials to some Christmas specials or whatever, to just about anything, excuse me. um and so it's been really fun to kind of explore that those abilities and those attributes and things like that. And so for me, like those are the things, because I think for me, like branding and design, like I'm just on my computer the entire time. So like the physicality, like I'm very much of like, I like going to the gym. I like, being able to work out and stuff like that. And I like love going for jogs and bike rides and things like that. So for me, like where's the physicality within my job? Obviously I could get on the little treadmill that they have now where, desk treadmill.
That's the old desk treadmill. He just does do it on Illustrator all day, just like
That's
walking.
great. But for me, like I'd much rather like get away from my desk and go down to Branson 45 minutes and go shoot something down there, or go, across town and go shoot something for a local business or whatever. That like excites me. So, and the shooting aspect is, anything from photography to video. It's just like, it's so much fun. And then the motion aspect, like the motion graphics aspect, that's why I like when you look at my website, it's strategy, branding, graphic design, and motion. Motion for me is photography, videography, and animation. And animation, I've been doing it pretty well. That's what got me into Evangel in the first place, is I wanted to get into that realm. I wanted to do, I wanted to work at Pixar. But then like 2 years into Evangel's time, I was like, this isn't going to work. This is not like, I'm not good, like Pixar good. And so it's kind of like recognizing my talents and recognizing like what I'm actually good at, my skill sets. And then like junior, senior year, when I was doing internships, it was like, wow, there's a vast world within advertising and marketing that you can do all these different things. You can do editorials, graphic design, branding, websites, video, all those things. And you're not like, oh, this is the only lane that exists. I can do so much more. And so for me, it was like, being able to take motion graphic classes at Evangel, and then obviously, and then it was very few, obviously, but taking that and then, doing digital ads at Big Pixel, and then now doing it now, it's like, man, I can do so much damage, I guess, in a lot of ways. So, and I've been able to produce some really cool motion graphic videos for a lot of different clients. One that like was for a lawn company back in my home state, and they literally, it got such a reaction to it because they had never done anything like that. So it just got a big pop. And so that was really cool because it was very small town Nebraska. And so it was just kind of cool to hear, some of these different stories of like, oh, well, people love this, or people love that. And so my philosophy is if people enjoy it, or if you enjoy it, they just keep doing it. And so like, that's kind of why I'm adding on video and photography to branding and graphic design and getting away with websites. I won't do that. I don't do social media management. I did that with a church earlier this spring, and it was the biggest booger in my life. And I don't know how people do it. I commend those who that's their profession, but like, no way. I can't.
It's no joke.
Yeah, it's a lot. I can only manage my own Instagram, and I have a hard time posting on my Instagram. So I can't do like 12 or 15 different accounts. That's crazy.
Oh man. Yeah. The last corporate job I had, it was that to the extreme. And like I got to a point very quickly. I was like, we need to hire, it's a multi-person. When you get to a certain scale where you're like having to, post multiple times a day sometimes. I mean, people have different philosophies on like how to approach and tackle different platforms.
Yeah.
And when a boss or whoever has a certain strategy, there has to be a certain budget for it. And otherwise it's like so hard to sustain, man. And I've definitely kind of seen the butt end of that, where it's just like, dude, this is just a grind, man. Just like posting, we'd be posting 3 times a day per account on multiple platforms. And yeah, it's no joke, dude. But it's cool to see how you've been able to identify, like, I think it's hard for creatives to identify like really truly what they are good at and what they love. And it's also like, in a way, you have to be so raw and vulnerable with yourself to recognize, like, I know kind of, you said something like I know I'm not Pixar good or whatever. Yeah. I mean, not to say you couldn't be, right? Like right. You have the creative eye and you have the skills, but it's like, okay, but maybe you're recognizing like, okay, how many years of like being stuck behind a computer without talking to a single soul. Yeah. Like if you isolated yourself just to focus on like, my goal is to work at Pixar, what would that look like for you? And then you have to kind of make a decision of like, am I willing and do I want to make whatever sacrifices, or am I totally fine to accept like what level I'm at and how
Yeah.
can I work with what I have? And then also obviously grow. Like I think we all want
Yeah.
to grow. We all want to like, improve our skills, like we want our work to be at a higher level year over year. You want to be able to look back and like say that you improved, right? But like, it is a tough thing to kind of, it's tough, but also very liberating to narrow down
Right.
like, okay, I don't want to do like, I'm actually, in a way, I'm kind of similar, web design. There's certain niches that I've kind of done a little bit everything to where
Yeah.
I'm also kind of identifying, okay, pick something I love and run with it. And maybe that is multiple things. Like I think there is an easy marriage between,
Yeah.
video and design and branding. I mean, really, any client that I'm sure you have, especially if you own kind of the brand creative and like
Yeah.
you have the IP around how did you help them develop that? I mean, gosh, how easy is it for you to include those services at this point? Because if
Yeah.
any existing clientele, like it's having the branding side dialed in and understanding that is huge because you already brought so much value to the table with that. And then
Right.
it's translating that into any sort of video or any other
Yeah.
kind of creative output.
Well,
That's really cool
that's
that you're
like,
adding.
well, and that's like with like Ozark Mountain Coffee Company, like that was something like revisiting the video that we just ended up trashing because it was okay, it was good, but I think they put it on their social, but like looking back, I'm like, I'm not super like jazzed about it. And so like, if I can improve what I did like that, I'm all for that. So when I pitched them the idea, for me, it's like, they already have the stuff that I've already built them, like and it was just like all stepping stones. So like with the coffee bags, it was like, okay, now I understand like kind of their style, what they're wanting, what kind of looks they're going for. And that was kind of then, okay, we bring that into the branding aspect of things. And then like the product photography, for sure, it was like, okay, well now let's like bring in let's bring in like the colored backgrounds of the browns and the oranges and things like that. And then let's basically make it kind of like, let's have leaves around these products to kind of represent the outdoors. And then the other thing is then taking some of that and then trying to translate it to the website. And now this year it was translating into, I did a poster for him, I did the anniversary logo, and then I did the video for him. Well, with the video is like, well, let's go shoot in the outdoors, go shoot at Busick Park, and let's go shoot out there. And I had a buddy of mine that actually, he went to Evansville too. But he, so it was great. It was awesome because it was such an easy video to do. But that's the thing, is like, for me, it's like, kind of going back to like, even like the, me saying like Pixar good, like, and kind of going off of what you said, like even Pixar good, like I'm Pixar good in the same in the sense that I'm in a different world. Like I'm good. I'm really good. And I think that's the thing, is just like recognizing that you're talented. Don't discredit yourself and say that you're not. And I think this year's been a real, out of the last 4 years that I've been doing this, I think this year for sure, I've built more confidence in myself. Like I've had time where I've been able to plan ahead and figure out what that next strategy meeting looks like, what that next interaction with a new client looks like, being confident in the prices, because I've never been confident in my prices. I've usually like just sold them on a price, and then we just start to negotiate it down to then the point that they're happy. But it's like, well, I'm not very happy about that price myself. So it's just like all those different things. And then also like being confident. Like I have constantly put myself in the comparison trap of like everybody else around me. And it's like, Andrew, just stay in your lane and let it unfold. So like even like social media is like one of those things that I've really just taken the time this year of like, I don't post a lot right now, and I scrapped everything that I had before and trying to just put things out that I feel passionate about, that is branded with Camp Ape on it. Versus just, oh, here's a nice little design I did for a client, or here's a nice little thing that I did. And I don't want to, obviously even with social media, I don't want to be looking like, some of those other social media influencers that are like, hey, be chipper today. If you do 50% of the work that you haven't done, then whatever. It's like
Day 5 of redesigning this logo until Apple uses it. Yeah, I know. Yeah,
it's so absurd. I mean, I guess I should say absurd, but it's just it's silliness to me.
Well, and like
Because
what does that look like for you right now, restructuring that? Because, again, I mean, I think it's so interesting how I think we draw a few parallels just when you're talking. I would so resonate with that because you kind of need to find stuff that you love to do. I mean, it's so crazy how, I don't know if it's our generation, like where it kind of feels like, our parents sort of, I don't know about, I mean, I'm sure for you, this would ring true, but like, you're just kind of taught to like, you find a good job, you find something stable, you just work, you find something that you're good at, but that doesn't necessarily mean something that you love to do. And in a way, I think there's this guilt that can come from being like, okay, yeah, like obviously, like I went to school for film and production, and so like it would be weird if I didn't try to land that career, right?
yeah,
But there's other things I'm good at. I mean, I did computer
yeah,
repair, I've done other things, and like I could have gone, I could be a manager at Best Buy, but
yeah,
instead I've chosen this other direction, and it is truthfully because obviously I enjoy it, but it's not like it's all rainbows and butterflies. I mean,
yeah,
sometimes it sucks. I mean, sometimes it's an absolute grind especially if some of the stuff in the process went weird, and you don't really feel like you're in your sweet spot and with certain projects or different things. But like, yeah, I mean, finding what you love to do, and I think that very much then should reproduce itself in social media, because all people
yeah,
want, and I've been studying this a bunch, and it just seems like what people want, like obviously there's formats, there's like the do this, 30-day challenge, do like there's trends and there's different things, but really what people want is just like some sort of understanding of you, some sort of personal, almost like a personal connection. And
yeah,
how can you exercise this muscle of like, I'm doing what I love. How do I just translate that in onto social media
sure.
without it being like that itself being a full-time job? And I
Yeah,
think people at our level where it's kind of like you're either, I mean, a freelance or a small agency, how do you sustain doing that while you're also kind of the main fulfillment arm of
yeah,
your work, right? It's a challenge. I mean, obviously
yeah,
it's going to put you over that 40-hour dream, a week type, or even people say 30 hours now. It's like, I don't know how people, I mean, great when you get a 30-hour week and you're making a ton of money,
it'd
but
be 20
that's not
hours. Yeah,
everybody's, yeah, I know. Yeah. I mean, good on those who figured it out, but I
yeah.
mean, yeah, I don't know. Do you have anything on that too,
Yeah, I think like for me, like the biggest thing that I've kind of recognized within last year. So like when I was working for this church, I was working for them through the winter, through the spring, and then it just we kind of went our separate ways around Easter time, and I did some crazy great work for them. They're still using a lot of the stuff that I produced for them, which is kind of cool to see. But they, I mean, when they were working with me, I mean, I was pushing sometimes 40, 50 hours a week, or not a week, a month. And so like, in retrospect, like it may not seem like maybe a lot, but it is when you're like taking on 2 or 3 other clients and you have to be able to manage their work too. And
Mhm.
so like those projects were lower performed than what I was doing for the church. And I didn't have any time for Camp 8. Like I just like it was not there. And even my website, like I never touched it. I never touched social media. It just was one of those things that just was stale pretty well till this fall. But in that time being, it like gave me time to kind of really think of like, how do I want to treat my social media? How do I want to treat my website? How do I want to treat my presence? Because like for me, Camp Ape is not me. It's a persona. It's a personality. It's a brand that has an identity. And as any business should have an identity, because it's the thing that people think of right away. Apple products are easily recognizable because of their slick designs and their cleanness and all that stuff. And then also, you know, you look at all these other different big brands. It's like most people look at it and go, oh, well, yeah, you know, I just need a logo or whatever. It's like, well, no, not really. You need really an identity system to really stand out. And especially among your competitors, like you're not competing against anybody. You're competing against yourself because you're trying to make a return on investment, but you can't because you have nothing to show for. And that's not like it's not a diss. It's just an observation of like, I've seen too many people, and Ozaground Coffee Company is a great example. They're one of those people that like they've taken pride in what they do. They want to show for it, and the results are that like the product itself is getting taken off the shelves easily. People are coming up to them like, "Wow, this is great! Like, what else do you guys have? All this stuff," and it becomes kind of a conversation starter. And so for me, like, they're a great example, just like thinking off the top of my head of what we talked about so far. Like they're a great example. And I hope they watch this because like they're great. But anyway, they
we'll gotta send them the link after.
Yeah. But yeah, I you know, they're one of those examples that's like, yeah, I mean, of course, like they've taken it and up a notch. Even their social media, it's like it's all consistent, it's all those things. So for me, going back to like Camp 8, like with the social media aspect, I started to disassociate myself with other comparisons. So like some of the big design companies, agencies and things like that, I've just decided to say, listen, they're in their lanes and I'm in my lane. It's fine to copy and paste, but at the end of the day, like I have to figure out what's going to work best for me and what's going to make me thrive. And I have a great, not to be boastful, but I have a great business mission statement. I have a great business name, and there's just a lot to do with Camp Ape. Like there's just a lot to explore. There's you know, you could do the mythical aspects of the forest. You can do, you know, with like taglines and slogans and copy. You can kind of explore the camping vibes. You know, it's just there's so many endless things. Even the visuals, just like I am so.
It's like you found your sandbox in a way where it's like,
yeah.
And I've had that journey with Make Stuff is like now suddenly the gates have opened for me creatively, where it's like, not only can I structure my agency around this identity, which used to be just me, and I would sort of be like, okay, I have to like, you know, make myself as interesting as possible, and you sort of start to feel like you're. It's a lot of just anxiety around, oh, I guess I just have to put myself out there a bunch and be super like. But it's so funny how having a really strong brand identity and really just a great sandbox with that to play with, in the sense that now you can kind of play with the endless possibilities as long as there's enough clarity around what it is, and you know that you're able to stick with it long enough, because that's the other thing is it's hard to, and that's partly as a creative why I think I've struggled for so long to be like, okay, what there is something about just having, people would say like it doesn't matter what your name is, you can always change it, but I do kind of think there is something to having a name and having a, like you said, a persona to basically be the person. And in a way you can kind of point to that person. It maybe is very closely tied to you. It may even be a direct reflection of you, but it doesn't have to be you. Right. And I think that's what's kind of, in a way, kind of like liberating about finding, you know, you don't have to be a big agency to function in the same way as a big agency, where you're going, okay, now this has a name, this has a vibe, we have a mission, vision, values, and all that stuff.
Well, and the funny thing is too about that, what you just said, like I've had so many people come up to me, one saying, wow, I love the name Camp Ape. Like how did that come about? Then I have to, you know, do the whole story of like how it came about. But then like it's super memorable, but then also what were you saying there lastly that got me going on this?
Well, kind of the sandbox or the kind of the, I don't know, trying to think of where I ended that one.
Yeah, like just the fact that like It's something that people catch on to pretty quickly. Oh, the thing I was gonna say
Oh, like
is
it's memorable.
yeah. The thing I was gonna say was that like it's so funny because the way I've structured my business now, people have come up to me, or I get emails a lot of times that'll be like, "Hey team," or "Hey, Camp Ape team," or whatever. And most people think that it's more than one person doing this. And it's kind of a cool situation because when I was Level Design Coach, like, you're a freelancer, you're just one person, blah blah blah. Now it's like, can't with Camp Ape, it's like I get a lot of approaches that are like, oh wow, you're just one person and you're doing all that stuff, like that's crazy. And I'm like, well, and I offer all these services because, like, for me, I look at the opportunity of the fact of like, you have a 20-man agency that's going to do all this work and it's probably going to charge you like, anywhere from 80,000 to 200,000 just to keep the lights on. Or, you can get with somebody like me and I will be able to provide you quality stuff. And it's just one guy, you're just one-on-one with me and that's it. Like there's no like telephone line and then that person leaves. Cause the past two places I worked at, they both were like that. There'd be people that would leave and then the client would be upset because they were like, well, now you don't understand my project. And they're like, well, that's because so-and-so left and they took their notebook with them and their notebook had all those notes in it. And so it's like, okay, well, now you got to start all over. Well, the client's mad. They're gone. They don't want to work with you anymore. So for me, it's like, I would much rather be able to be personal with people, but then also relatable and all those things and be impactful in that way. And I've noticed like in my profession, like in my area down here is like, I'm standing among a lot of these big studio people, and now they're wanting to get lunch with me. And I'm not trying to like, say, whoa, what is me? Look at me or whatever. But it's kind of cool. It's like the people that I like when I got out of Evangel was like, I want to work with those people. I want to work at that place. Now I'm actually like going to lunch with these people. And it's so cool. It's so fun. And it's like just changed my whole world where I'm just kind of like, this is really fun and really cool. But kind of going back to like the social media thing, like this whole year, even my website, like I was really like, I examined like things that weren't designers that I was following on like Instagram and stuff, but focusing on like big name brands, like like things that I like from their feed, and how can I kind of like use that as a reference and do my own thing. So like big names like Pepsi and I'm trying to think of some of the others. I think maybe Taco Bell was another one. Like Taco Bell and Pepsi just have really good consistency with their design choices and their social media and all that stuff. But then, it just, and then looking at other people's websites and seeing like what they're doing creatively, that, how are they telling the story? How are they getting people to come and be like, okay, hire now or whatever. So that's been kind of cool. Just to kind of use that as reference, but then, yeah, like connecting with these people and for people to kind of see Camp Ape as more than just one person. It's as a whole persona. It's just really cool to kind of see all that kind of unfold, I guess, in the last like year and a half since I changed.
What do you feel like? Because you have, I mean, obviously it's awesome that people can, you're being perceived as a player in a space, at a scale larger than one person. And I think that's an incredible achievement in 5 years, right? Like that's killer. And then, obviously been doing this for 5 years. I mean, how have you been able to keep the foot on the pedal, without going out seeking out like maybe a regular agency job then at this point, since you've got all this in your back pocket? Like do do you have maybe the temptation or the feelings of like, oh, I should do that, or are you just so sold out on what you're doing now that you're like, I wouldn't trade it for anything? What keeps your foot on the pedal with keeping your own thing going this strong?
There has been those temptations. There's always like, there's been a few agencies in town that I'm like, oh man, I love what they're doing. And the people that they have on that team, like, I would love to be on that team. And then it's like, hold up, Andrew, like you got a really great situation. Like we were talking before this, like, two kids under two, and my wife's a stay-at-home mom. And so it's like one of those situations where it's like it's a win-win situation. Like you have that, you have your family that you can attend to, you can be active in their lives, but then also like you're getting to do things for fun. Like you just get to like create things that are just fun stuff. But yeah, there's been some jobs out there that I'm like, ooh, that looks good. But then like I kind of like outweigh the goods and the bads, the pros and cons, I guess. There's actually an opportunity earlier this spring, and there was a guy, it was one of my clients actually, and he was like, hey, this job situation opened up, would love to have you. I mean, he was doing everything he could to be like, hey, listen, this would be great, this would be awesome. And for me, I was looking at it like, well, maybe there's a way that I can do both, because nowadays it seems like everybody's kind of a little more flexible with that. Like they're okay if you want to do kind of a side gig. So I was kind of thinking, well, maybe I do Camp Ape as more of a side gig than I do kind of this permanent thing. But then the more I thought about it, it just didn't make any sense, because my vibe didn't really, I mean, my personality really meshed well with them. But like, as far as like the creative side of it goes, it just felt very different from the vastness that I do within Camp Ape. I'm serving like a whole bunch of different clienteles from all types of walks of life, where this would be very specific, very niche. And so that kind of like was one of those things that I was like, I'll do the interview process. I didn't get it, but it was one of those things where I was like, you win some, you lose some. And, but I think like the motivation has been all over the place. Like, honestly, like I've been, from my experience of spring with the church, that's motivated me to just go hard with Camp Ape. And then like, inspirations out there, music that I listen to, podcasts that I listen to, shows I watch, all those things, like they've all been big influences in this year of like, no, this is exactly where you need to be. And then there's a group out here called Springfield Creatives that just, I would do anything for them. Like, it's an organization that just like puts on these monthly events that are creative specific. And so, we've had all types of keynote speakers, from Aaron Draplin to Fried Design Co. here in Springfield, to people like Joshua Noom from Florida. He did some stuff from like Old Spice and things. So, I mean, we've had all types of different designers and video people and all those things presented this stuff. I presented earlier this year, which is really cool. But it's just like a really fun group. And because I'm a freelancer, it's allowed me to kind of be able to have creative friends in a way. Because like, when I'm working by myself, I don't have anybody to bounce ideas off of or anything like that. And sometimes it's just, you need to be able to get out of the office and get going with your community and stuff like that. So, big community involvements with like the church and then the Springfield Creatives groups. Like, this is just, it's those are the ways that I keep motivated, to keep driven. Because like, I tell you what, like I'll get away from one of those events that Springfield Creatives does, and the next day I'm like, okay, let's do something else. Let's do something creative here. Let's try to do a quick design or whatever. So it's a lot of fun. It's fun to have some of these influences and some of these different things that kind of influence the work and keep you going. I do feel burnt out sometimes. In most winters, I feel burnt out because it's Q4 is usually more of a dip with clientele, but like honestly, it's all good because like this year I've been focusing a lot on Camp Ape and what does 2025 look like. So just like New Year goals. So yeah.
Yeah. Well, I do have like kind of one more question for you, and also just kind of a thought too, like because yeah, I mean, I think community in the space of like the creative self-employed, like it is so important, and I'm realizing that more and more is like any way you can, even if it's not super organized, right? Like any way that you can connect with other creatives that want to connect, who want to, you know, be able to feed off of one another is so important, dude. And yeah, I'm definitely it's cool to hear like just how much they mean to you, and like you know, personally I'm looking for that like in my circles too, of just who can you lean on for insight and support
Yeah.
and encouragement and all that. And it is so important because you are like, your clients aren't necessarily people you can do that with. Like you're serving them, right? And so in a
Yeah.
way, it's hard to lean on them for encouragement. I mean, the best you might get is like feedback and different things, and you almost kind of, you want to keep that level of professional.
Well,
like,
also how personal do you want to get with them too? You know,
yeah,
I
exactly.
kind of recognize that too. Like you don't want to get too personal with your client because you don't want them to know that like, you know, you have a dog and 2 girls at home and then a wife, and you don't, you know, necessarily want them to know all your ins and outs and all that stuff, or, you know, from a project by project basis, you know, what you're doing for this other client and how it's turning out and all these different things. You know, you want to be able to keep it low key, but you want to have that good client relationship. And so, yeah, it's trying not, it's kind of trying to separate business and personal. But yeah, I agree with you on that. It's and it's hard. I think like, when we had Joshua Noom come up, you know, he was saying that, you know, there's no group like that down where he's at in Florida. And it's kind of like, you forget like, oh yeah, there's a lot of states, a lot of areas that don't have like a cool group that meets once a month, and, you know, our other creatives. And I think like the other thing that I've found that could be an encouragement to you is like, find people that like you want to, like, I think the podcast is great. I think it's a great way to be able to connect with people, because people like myself will say yes to, you know? And so, you know, for me, it's like, if you can figure out ways to connect to other people that fascinate you. I've met with, you know, all types of people. I like, even earlier this year, I chatted with Jacksonville Jaguars, and chatted with their creative content manager down there. Like, and now we're good buds. Like we literally we Instagram chat each other, like about Star Wars or other weird stuff. And, or, you know, I'll kind of like, not necessarily, I wouldn't say taunt, but kind of like tease them a little bit with the Jaguars and the Chiefs, because right now the Chiefs are doing really well, and obviously I'm a Chiefs fan. So, but, you know, just like different stuff like that. Like now it's like, you know, you create those relationships after meeting with them so many times or chatting with them, that they kind of become pals, you know? And I think that that's really good for us as creatives but I think we get so stumped in this world of like, well, how do we do that? You know, how do we kind of have a hard time of thinking outside the box. And I think that's kind of the key. So like, even my encouragement is just like, go find those people that you're like, man, these be really cool people to meet with, and just try to see if you can get a talk with them. I tried to talk with earlier this year with somebody from Hasbro. I try to reach out to them and see if they would want to chat. I haven't gotten an email back from them, probably because they're too busy making toys. But It just would be really cool to,
It's Christmas, dude. They're out here just like,
yeah, yeah. They're like, we're gonna get this ready for Santa's sleigh. Yeah, exactly. But yeah, was there a question on that, by the way? Was there?
Yeah, no, it's because I was gonna follow up with that with, and I'm actually I'm getting the old red light of like, hey, when are you done? So I'm like, okay, I guess maybe this is my last question. I don't know. We could do the Rogan 3-hour thing. I'm just saying this could easily,
of course.
And so let me preface this last question with saying part 2 is going to be a 3-hour episode. I don't know how with having 2 kids we'll manage to do it, but we will find a way. Okay, even if it means me coming out there and then I'll take you away. I don't know. We'll figure something out. But
definitely,
my brother lives in town, so at some point we'll make a plan to come to Springfield. We'll get together. It'll be great. But yeah, dude, like we talk about how it's like we're kind of a one-man band. We're kind of in this freelance space. We want to grow. Obviously, I think year over year, just like we want the quality of our work to grow, we want our income to grow. We want to be able to grow into new levels of business and entrepreneurship and all this stuff. For you, I know you're kind of thinking a lot about branding and identity and kind of like putting yourself out there too, but like, do you have any ideas as far as like, especially when it comes to branding and design? Are there ideas you're having as far as, okay, going into 2025 with you have like a lot of innovation and stuff we could touch on later too, but like, what stands out to you as the greatest opportunity for people in your space, like what you're doing right now, as far as scaling your efforts? Maybe that means increasing your pricing. Maybe it means going after bigger clients. Like what do you feel like is the opportunity you're seeing that, and you're maybe kind of hoping that you can grow your company through some new maybe initiatives or just maybe growing what you're doing?
Yeah. Good question too. I think it's all like learning from your mistakes. So like obviously the last few years, there's been a few hiccups, but then there's also been a lot of good things that have come from my experiences with different clients. And so, like I was saying, like this winter for sure, like the last few winters, like I get into this whole, like, and it's, winter, what do they call it? Not like, I don't want to use the word depression, but like winter blues, I guess. Whereas it's the woe is me, what do I do with with my business? I don't have clients right now, all that stuff. And not to say that I don't have clients right now, but like, that's the mentality.
It definitely slows down. Like I'm definitely experiencing that too, where it's like people are pretty quiet out there,
Yeah, for sure. And it's like, okay, I guess we're getting ready for the holidays. But like, I think for me, like I've really sat down and kind of talked it through, as weird as that sounds, of like, what does that look like for next year? So some of the things that I've already started to get really jazzed about for next year is like my strategy. Before, when I was doing strategy sessions, it would be a lot of like Q&As versus like actually sitting down and figuring out a process. And I would sit down with my clients, but a lot of the Q&As that I was doing, it just seemed like repetitive questions. And a lot of times they would get stumped on something and they'd be like, well, can we go back to that question or whatever later, and things like that. And I started to find out like 2 or 3 clients this year that were like, so what is this? What is this for? What are we doing here? And that's when I was like, okay, I got to rethink this, because something's not working well, because it's not being communicated to them of like, because they think internally, like, is this a time waster? Can I be doing something else? All that stuff. So that's one thing. So really, I've really thought
it's like you're honing your process. You're really evaluating. Yeah.
And within that strategy session, we're looking at like target audiences in mind. We're looking at the competitiveness, who's in the competition with us, like what does their social media look like, their websites, their branding, all that stuff. What do they have that we don't? Looking at like analytics as far as like numbers, how are numbers going for them versus us, what's this one project that we want to really get accomplished. And then it opens up the floodgates of like, okay, well, what else can we do from here? And then within that, it also, we're defining, what that look is, for them as a business and stuff. But then the other stuff I'm looking at is like, yeah, price increases. Obviously, as we all know, like, this economy is just like, it's hit us hard the last like year and a half, I think, majorly compared to a lot of like even like 2020 and until now, it's kind of hit us quite a bit harder, especially like, and you can relate to this with having 2 kids and being able to also like help out with food on the table. It gets a bit challenging, how do you manage, your time? Like, do you go to the local grocery store where they may have prices that are smaller than others, all those things. And so it's, looking at that price increase, what does that look like? It's looking at, planning ahead as far as, different agendas, different ways to approach my social media. I'm trying to figure out things that the design community and creatives alone are not really doing. And so I'm like, okay, well, I'm going to try to do it. I'm going to try to figure out a way to like project something that looks really cool on social media that is my brand. And so that's been kind of fun. I got a few ideas in the works. I'm working with a video production team. This is all I'll say on the social media part is I'm working with a video production team to kind of put together a video for me. I've already put the script together. I'm really excited for it. They're excited about it, but they're loaded with editing projects and video projects have been slamming them this December. So it may not be till next January that we film it or something, but so there's just all this different type of stuff that I'm looking forward to next year. And obviously, like, I think that's what's getting me really optimistic about next year is just the idea of like figuring out this battle plan of like, how do we conquer the next year? How do we go into it knowing like, hey, this is what we're doing. This is how we're doing it. I've also kind of come to like put together, I call it my hiking guide, and basically like walks a client through the process of what that process looks like, from A to B or A to Z. As far as like, we're going to start with initial meeting, and then the end of this, I'm going to be giving you those deliverables. And so that way they understand I'm on the same mind track. Cause I've had in the past where sometimes we'll be midway through a project and it'll be like, they'll ask me a question of like, hey, we thought about this. Could we, add that in there? It's like, that wasn't a part of the project, but sure. And then I'll usually just like not even charge them for that. I'll just put it in the flat rate that I gave them. And so a lot of times I've done more damage to myself than I have, with the relationship. And knowing my worth, knowing my value. And so that's one thing that I'm like, now I have a blueprint of like, okay, this is my process. Don't deviate from that. And then the other thing with it too is nice is that like, I now have a process in mind that I can be able to use in those times where it's a cold call or a cold email. I can easily send that to them without having to spend like 2 hours on the phone trying to tell them like what I do. This process already tells them like I have my services list out in it and all this stuff. So it's just a really great breakdown and just a easier way to process things. So I'm just super excited for those type of objectives for next year. And seeing what 2025 brings, but just with doing the stuff that I have for Camp Ape in the last like 2-3 months, it's been like, man, this is exciting. Like I'll go inside sometimes and I'll be like, okay, I'm doing this, I'm doing this, I'm doing this. And my wife will be like, okay, that's cool. Thanks for letting me know. Or it'll be like, oh, you told me that yesterday.
Yeah.
I'm super, it's going to be,
That's
going to be
great.
good 2025.
That's great, man. I mean, yeah, I think that the marketing efforts and then like refining your process, all super valuable. And yeah, I'm kind of going through a similar evaluation and I love kind of some of the ideas, some of the things you're saying. It's really, I think as a one-man band, it's like, you got to find any way possible to just refine what you're doing, be able to get your marketing, strengthen your marketing and bring in fresh leads, fresh clients, all that stuff. And
Yeah.
I'm excited for what you're going to be working on next year, man. I really think I mean, it's all, I think, not all creatives have this like, win some attitude and this like optimism and joy that I think you bring every time we've had a conversation. I just really appreciate like your attitude. And I obviously I know that attribute like your personality to your success. It's just, I think people love working with you. And I think it's important for a lot of creatives, man. Is like, be a great person to work with, like have a great attitude, be fun to work with. And I know that, dude, that's you, like 10 out of 10, man. Like you're a killer guy. And I just appreciate we can connect, man. If after 3 years since our Instagram live is what we did, we didn't do it. I was everything we did a podcast, but dude, I'm excited for the next one. I feel like what we need, this is what we need, and every guest is going to have a part 2, because this is like everything's part 1. Make Stuff podcast is like in its infancy, so you're on the ground floor, man, of like we're gonna look back at this Make Stuff podcast and you're gonna be like, dude, I was like in episode 4 or 5 or whatever, and like look at it now, and now we're out here just partying over 1,000 episodes or something. Who knows? We'll see where it goes. But
1,000 episodes, yeah.
I'm just trying to draw from your optimism, I'm just trying to think big and think, so.
Well, I was thinking 1,000 episodes, like as far as like doing 1,000 episodes.
1,000 of us talking, dude. I mean,
1,000 parts.
We could do a lot worse. We could do a lot worse than that, honestly. I could think of a lot worse ways to spend my time.
I think that's a whole book series right there.
Yeah.
Different parts.
That would have to, if that couldn't be a book after 1,000 conversations, then we got some problems. We might need to read a few more books ourselves or something. I don't know, but yeah, dude, appreciate you, man.
Hang in person, If it gets to 1,000, that means that we probably should hang out in person. That's probably what that means.
Yeah, let's try to do that, especially if it takes 1,000 episodes first. So dude, appreciate you, man. All my best to the team at Camp Ape, and all that you're working on. And I'm just stoked on your journey, man. We're rooting for you over here, and I'm in Washington right now, but California and West Coast life. So we'll stay in touch, dude, and maybe we'll find some collab down the road here, so we can kind of keep chatting about stuff down the road, especially next year.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. I'll start thinking and brainstorming of ways that we can collaborate in some big ways. So
I'd love it.
Cool. Thanks for having me on, man. This has been fun.
You got it. Hey fam, if you liked this episode with Andrew today, go ahead and subscribe and follow to make sure you don't miss all the new episodes that are coming out. We got some guests lined up in January and onward, and I think 2025 is going to be a lot of fun in this space. And so if you want to be a part of the fam, just subscribe and follow. Looking forward to seeing you online.